This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station, and it's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hello, it is Wednesday, June 24th, and you know, Donald Trump and the Republican senators seem to be running out of patience with one another. How's that for a way to put it? Remember yesterday I told you that the Republican senators meet every Wednesday at noon in Washington for a lunch where they can just talk about everything that's important to them. Rick Scott, who's in charge of setting the agenda, told everybody that he had invited Donald Trump to join them today. So remember, this is noon Washington time, 11 a.m. Chicago time. And there was a prediction, not only from the senators that Trump has basically shoved out of office. We're looking at you, Tom Tillis, Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, but the head of the Republicans in the Senate, John Thune, said that the Republicans were going to speak, hopefully have a conversation and explain to Donald Trump, speak bluntly to Donald Trump about why the SAVE Act, which is this outrageous voting discrimination bill, Thune was going to try to explain to Trump once again why it is not going to happen. Donald Trump has been obsessed with this. And, you know, that's part of the reason why he said, get rid of the filibuster. Then we only need, 51 votes. And Thune said he was going to explain to the president, there isn't even 51 votes. It's just a dead issue. Please move on. I don't understand why Donald Trump is making this a hill he apparently wants to die on with the Senate. Where do you move forward if you say, look, there is absolutely no way we don't have the votes. Then we've counted the numbers. We don't have the votes. Some Senate Republicans said that part of the problem is that Republican Senator Lee out of Utah keeps telling the president that if the Senate just works hard enough, they can pass the SAVE Act, which, according to John Thune, is just not true. So what did Donald Trump do? There was a bipartisan bill that showed up on his desk. Bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats supported this bill that was going to make the cost of housing a little bit easier to undertake. Housing is a real problem. In addition to gas prices and grocery prices, there are, what did I see in the Wall Street Journal? There are something like 242 communities in the United States right now where a starter house is $1 million or more. And so this bipartisan bill, it could have gone further, but it made some accommodations for that were supposed to encourage new construction, and not just new construction of McMansions or, multi-million-dollar spec houses, but construction of houses that actual people can actually afford. And there were all these measures to encourage that kind of thing. Donald Trump has said he's not signing it. Yep. Well, he didn't say that he's vetoing it. He was supposed to sign it today, and he just rescheduled himself. Yeah, that signing ceremony that was supposed to take place, 1:32 this afternoon, maybe 11 a.m. this morning. Yeah, not happening. Take it off my schedule. Because he thinks that if he continues to apply pressure, somehow the Senate will magically come up with the votes they need to pass a measure that is dead in the water, and justifiably so. supposedly, during this lunch today, President Trump said, I don't know why 4 of you voted to rein in, you voted for this resolution to rein in my power to wage war in Iran. I don't know why you did that. And Bill Cassidy, who was a big supporter of Trump until Trump ran a primary opponent against him and knocked him out, Bill Cassidy, by reporting in CNN, said to the president, is that a rhetorical question, or do you really want an answer? And Trump apparently said he really wanted an answer. And apparently Bill Cassidy went on to explain the fact that it's a bad deal he signed with Iran. He didn't consult Congress. There was no congressional input on the content, on the process. They weren't involved at all. And those kinds of things, one after the other, led 4 Republican senators to vote with the Democrats and approve a resolution that he should be reined in when it comes to Iran. And shortly after that, President Trump got up and walked out because apparently the conversation with Bill Cassidy turned into a shouting match. Bill Cassidy told a reporter, as they were discussing this, he said, Trump kept raising his voice to me, and I would raise my voice back to him. And they ended up shouting at one another. And shortly thereafter, the president decided he'd had enough of lunch. And Bill Cassidy said, I lost my temper. I shouldn't have done that. But it takes 2 to tango. Trump started it. Nah. So, I don't know if you saw Donald Trump made some comments in the hallway. It was a great meeting. It was a really great meeting. Really like almost everybody in that room. Well, there's some people I don't like, and maybe I'll tell you who they are at a later time. But it was a great meeting. Next to him was Rick Scott, the Republican senator who is in charge of setting the agenda for that meeting. He's the one who invited Donald Trump. He looked shaken. He looked pale. And, all the Republicans now are trying to say, oh, great meeting. But if you see that clip, Donald Trump's kind of doing that thing where he wags his head back and forth. It was a great meeting. And I get along. I like almost everybody in the room. There are some in the room I don't like, but, I'll tell you who they are at a later date with that smug little grin. But look at Rick Scott standing next to him. Rick Scott is one of MAGA's loudest voices. And Rick Scott, it's hard to describe. He doesn't seem comfortable. He seems particularly pale. Obviously, the shouting match that prompted the president to get up and leave clearly rattled Rick Scott. Clearly, that was not the discussion that they hoped they were going to have at this lunch. But they all said, the SAVE Act is dead. We have to finally, we have to kind of speak truth to power here. We got to tell him this Iran deal sucks. We got to tell him the SAVE Act doesn't have the votes. And so they knew going in it was going to be a difficult conversation. Couldn't happen to a nicer group of fellas. Oh, well, yeah, there's some women there, too. By the way, let's see, it was Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, and Rand Paul were the Republican senators who voted with the Democrats to get this war powers resolution passed. Yeah. The Democrats do a press availability, a press conference, if you want to call it that, once a week. Keep the media up to speed on what the Democrats think and what the Democrats are doing. That was today. The Democratic leaders are Pete Aguilar and Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu is a congressman from California. Like I said, the Dems all do this thing every Wednesday. And I must tell you, that Ted Lieu is my new hero. He spoke to the crowd and he covered a lot of bases. He covered them bluntly. He covered them pretty much everything that you want to say to Trump or you've heard about Trump. He covered that. You remember yesterday I also told you that Eli Lilly has this experimental weight loss drug supposed to be much stronger and more effective than Ozempic or Wegovy. And that it was revealed that in April, a 79-year-old man, described as well-connected, was given this drug under compassionate use. Now, who knows? I mean, if Trump wanted it, they would probably just give it to him. Compassionate use, by its very definition, is allowing somebody to take a drug that has not been FDA approved because they have a terminal illness. And that is why even without FDA approval, if somebody's terminal and they feel that whatever drug you're working on is their only hope, they can apply for compassionate use and get that drug that is not FDA approved if they are terminal. Ted Lieu talked about that because, you know, the reporters who broke that story had reached out to Eli Lilly over and over again about who was this 79-year-old guy in April who got this drug, somebody you say is very well connected, and they wouldn't answer and they wouldn't answer. So the reporters put out their reporting. And then a spokesperson for Eli Lilly said, well, we just want you to know it wasn't Donald Trump. Okay. Like yesterday, I walked you through my thought process. Somebody 79, well-connected. CEOs can be well-connected, but there aren't a lot of CEOs, at least not CEOs of big companies who are 79. With a few exceptions, there aren't even a lot of 79-year-old elected officials. Yeah, there's a handful who haven't retired yet. But who would that be? Who would have been 79 years old in April, well-connected, and obviously somebody with obesity that is threatening their health? Threatening, if you really look at the definition of compassionate use, not only threatening their health, threatening their life. Who would that be? That was another one of the things that Ted Lieu touched on today. And you know what he said? It's like after I listened to him, I wanted to like stand up and cheer. I will share with you this. This is the regular Democratic weekly news conference. And this is Ted Lieu talking about everything you ever wanted to know about all the things going on now and Donald Trump. Listen to this.
Inflation is up. Grocery prices are up. Utility costs are up. Housing prices are up. We have a bipartisan housing bill that both the Congress and Senate passed. There was supposed to be a big signing ceremony today in the Capitol. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump decides he's not coming to sign the bill. Well, why is that? Did he wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Is he unable to stay awake today? What's causing him to chicken out again? Is it Taco Wednesday? Or is it side effects from a drug? We don't know. This erratic behavior of the president is very concerning. He has trouble staying awake at multiple White House events and cabinet meetings. He has clearly some weakness in one of his arms. He's got swelling in his hands. And the White House needs to come clean. What we know is there's a report saying that one person in America got this special new drug. It was a 79-year-old person who was very high profile, and this drug can only be given to someone under the compassionate use provision, meaning you do that if someone basically has a terminal illness. So we need to know, did Donald Trump get this special drug from Eli Lilly? And did he get it under that provision? And if he did, why is that the case?
Yep. the grocery price is high, inflation is going up. He didn't sign the housing bill, and he seems to be one of the most likely candidates as the guy who got this drug. You know, nobody thinks that Donald Trump is healthy. I mean, this guy, what did I read? That he has 32 medical specialists who he sees. 32. He has obvious signs. Some are simply age-related. Some appear to be serious health signs. I mean, Ted Lieu didn't even mention Donald Trump's ankles. Donald Trump essentially doesn't have ankles anymore. The opening of his shoe, his leg goes straight up like a tree trunk. And yet we're told, oh, you know, what was it the doctor said? Oh, he's like the healthiest, you know, he's the healthiest 7 to 9-year-old I've ever seen. He's amazing. But we've always been told that. Remember in Donald Trump's first administration, his personal physician signed off on the fact that, oh, he was great. He had these great test results, that great test results. You know, he was in fabulous shape. And after Donald Trump was voted out of office, that doctor said to the media he didn't write that statement and he hadn't even read it. It was handed to him. This is your statement. He had nothing to do with it. He was like, you know, I didn't write it. It was handed to me, and I was told that this was going to be my report. So are we supposed to believe the doctors now? Of course not. And I love the fact that Ted talks about the fact, you know, Democrats should be talking about this more often. If Joe Biden fell asleep in a meeting, dear God in heaven, Republicans would be banging a drum. Donald Trump does it all the time. He falls asleep in the Oval Office when people are there for a bill signing. He falls asleep in cabinet meetings. It appeared that he fell asleep for a minute or two in the state dinner with King Charles. But he's great. He is terrific. Frankly, I think, have you noticed, not that he isn't always smarmy, but have you noticed lately that J.D. Vance always has like a really smug smile on his face? Sure, he's been sent to Iran or Switzerland to negotiate the Iran deal, and that's a losing proposition. By the way, the White House and Iran are still saying different things about what's going on. Choose your adventure. I think J.D. Vance realizes that Donald Trump is not going to live out this term, and all he has to do is keep walking, put one foot in front of the other, and he is going to be president. I think that's why he's smiling all the time. You're sent to Switzerland, and you are clearly being set up to fail, and you appear to be the happiest man on the planet? Is a puzzlement. And I want to take a few minutes. By the way, the text lines and the call lines are open, 773-763-9278. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about FIFA, the World Soccer, as we call it soccer, they call it football, championships, and all of the foreigners who have been sent to different cities around our country. And last night, I went to bed early, so I was kind of scrolling through Instagram Reels, And there was post after post after post. Scotsmen, French, Italians, people from the UK. And they were all like, I remember there was one couple, they actually came to visit Chicago. And they were like, hey, everybody told us not to go to Chicago, that it was awful and that it was dangerous. This city's great. It's clean. It's easy to get around. And there's so much. There's architecture. There's so much to see. They were like, we love Chicago. And that's frankly one of the messages that's coming through a lot in these posts is that outside of the United States, we were told the United States is awful. It's dangerous. It's vicious. You're going to get attacked on the street. And what we have found is that that's not true. And what we have found is that these people are so friendly, so friendly. One of the French guys who made a post was like, he's like, everywhere I go, people smile at me and say, hi, hi, what is this hi? He said, in France, nobody's going to talk to you as you're walking down the street. What is this hi? By the way, you probably know by now that the Scots, when they were in Boston, literally drank the city dry of beer. Tavern owners say that the amount of beer they sold was 3 times the volume that they sell on St. Patrick's Day. Some of the other things that the people who are visiting our country are finding just shocking. First of all, I'm sure you've heard by now, they've fallen in love with ranch dressing. Somebody described it as crack. Why has no one told us about this ranch dressing? To the point where TSA actually put out a statement on social media telling people that if they're bringing bottles of ranch dressing home, it has to be in their checked bag. It can't be in their carry-on. They actually sent that message out. They are also amazed that we have, in some places, unlimited drink refills. That's like, you know, the one guy was saying to his friend, they just keep coming. And the guy was like, don't drink so much Coke. He was like, but it just keeps coming. They are also amazed at bread baskets, that bread is just put on the table. One famous Japanese tourist, and if you want, he posted like a whole essay on this. He went to like a Mexican restaurant and they put chips and salsa on his table. And he looked at the waiter and he said, what is this? And the guy was like, chips and salsa. And he said, but I haven't earned this. And he went on to eat 3 baskets of chips with salsa because he felt it would be rude to stop since they were being so gracious and continuing to bring it to him. They've discovered the Waffle House, a chain of gas stations in the South, Bucky, Golden Corral, a buffet. A buffet was something that really blew their mind. It has been delightful to see our country through their eyes. And uniformly, they are amazed at how welcoming and how friendly Americans are. By the way, I know, Lady B, I'm going to go over a little bit, but I just want to get this in. There have been, I believe, in the Mirror, the Daily Mirror, they wrote an article that people in the White House, aides in the White House, are trying to figure, first of all, they're trying to prevent Trump from hearing some of the chants that are going on when it's an English-speaking crowd, whether that's New Zealand, whether that's Australia, whether it's the United Kingdom. And they're also very worried because at the end of this tournament, Trump's supposed to present the trophy. But the Aussies, the New Zealanders, and the fans from the UK have been chanting terrible things. The Aussies, Aussie boys were on a bender. Donald Trump is a sex offender. Over and over again. And the UK, I can't tell you everything that's in the UK chant because some of it is not suitable for radio, but the first sentence is, he's fat, has piles, and he's in the Epstein files. Piles, by the way, are hemorrhoids. He's fat, has piles, and he's in the Epstein files. That's from the United Kingdom. God love him. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Find rebates and discounts on energy-efficient products at ComEd.com/home savings.
Want to join the conversation?
I'm going to say exactly what I think here.
Got something to say?
Everyone needs to hear what I got to say.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
It is Wednesday, and as we do Monday through Thursday, we spend the first hour of the show talking to you, taking your calls, reading your texts. This text came in. I told you Trump canceled the signing ceremony for the new affordable housing bill that passed, bipartisan, passed both houses. Somebody texted in, any bill that is passed automatically becomes law if it's not signed by the president after 10 days. And this person believes there are enough votes to override a veto. I don't think Trump cares about that. I honestly think he's throwing a tantrum. You won't pass my SAVE Act. I'm not going to sign your housing bill. Nah. Or something like that. Excuse me. Let's go to the phone lines. Jackie's on the line from Mount Prospect. Hey, Jackie, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Joan?
Peachy, though I seem to be choking. I'm not quite sure why.
Oh,
Go ahead.
oh my goodness. I want to thank you for all your work. I know this is a little bit off the immediate topic, but it's something I'd like to bring up because it's not much on the radar, and that's what's happening to the rights of disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll bear with me for just a second, I hate talking about myself, but I want to, for just a second, just as an example, to make a point. Okay, I happen to be totally blind. I have been all my life. I'm a retired political science professor, one of those woke people, you know. And I have 2 master's degrees and a PhD. I had wonderful parents, wonderful teachers. I got a good education. I got opportunities. So by working hard, I was able to have a career, pay my taxes, and all that. Stephen Miller, I understand, has just come out. He would like to see people with disabilities institutionalized rather than give community support for people to have care and education and opportunities in their community. And as you know, the Nazis, when they started out, their first targets were severely mentally disabled people that they took out of institutions, put in trucks and gassed, and convinced the medical community that, well, this is a mercy because they're not living, they're just existing, and they're taking up national resources and all that. So if these people get to do what they want to do, then I think maybe the education and the opportunities for younger people with disabilities maybe won't be there. And it's not.
I think you're exactly right, Jackie. And that's why I think that we need to make sure that people understand this. I talked about it earlier this week, and what the government under Trump is trying to do is basically undermine the Americans with Disabilities Act. Right. And their argument is, oh, you know, you don't have to make your building accessible. That's just that's asking too much work, too much money. Buildings, things don't need to be accessible. We're going to try to undo that.
But, you know, it's not only inhumane, it's stupid. You know, I had the education, the opportunities. I was able to do what I wanted to do. And I've paid taxes my whole career, and I'm still paying taxes like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And, so, I mean, even if you don't have the morals and so on, it's stupid to prevent people from reaching their potential. Even if you have no heart, hey, it's money that's not going into the treasury. It's labor that's not going into society.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the way we reason, but I realize these people have no ethics, so you have to, make the instrumental arguments, and you have to be Machiavelli and try to reason with them. But I wanted to bring this up. I'm sorry for talking about myself, but I'm just
no. I mean, that's how people understand. If you talk about something that's just in theory, it's sometimes harder to take it in. But when somebody says, this is who I am, and this is my story, and this is how I live, that's something people can relate to and understand. So, Jackie, don't ever apologize again for coming on this show and talking about yourself, because I think it is the absolute best way to talk about this issue. And I thank you so much for the call.
Thank you for all your work. Thank you. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Jackie. I want to share a text that came in. Remember, I told you yesterday that Carl from Kankakee was recovering from kidney stone surgery. He's doing a little bit better, but he asked me, is Donnie still living on Big Macs? I read an excerpt. Today, I've got my copy of Regime Change at my local independent bookstore that I'm going to pick up after work. I read an excerpt where they must have talked to the White House staff. You know how he doesn't sleep in the middle of the night? Well, apparently he eats junk food in bed. And the staff in the morning has to clear up potato chip bag wrappers and from the bed and from the floor. And the White House staff has learned that they also have to go through the trash, because if he's eating some junk food that requires a knife and fork, he's using the historic sterling silver White House cutlery. And when he finishes his meal, he throws it all in the wastebasket, including the sterling silver. And so the people who take care of his room have learned that they have to go through the wastebasket to make sure that any of the sterling silver isn't in there. They also said, this is a little dicey, in his bathroom, apparently his bathroom is carpeted, and they have had large pieces of that same carpeting cut up as rugs, and they put one on the floor every day, and they have several of them so that they can be taken out and laundered. Now, I'm not saying that we don't launder our bathroom rugs, but, what do you do that? Maybe once a month? Once every month and a half? When you look down and they look a little dirty? They have several of these pieces of carpet so that they can take it out and put a fresh one in. And that might just be too much information. And if so, I apologize. Let's get one more caller in. Let's go to South Carolina, where Leo's on the line. Hi, Leo. How are you?
How are you doing?
Good.
Well, I wanted to call about what if Biden were doing this situation, but I also wanted to mention the lady that called earlier about the eugenics program that Stephen Miller and Cittadini are trying to put in. I'm an avid Thom Hartmann fan, and so long ago, somebody kept saying, do you think, like a Republican called into it and said, do you think I'm a Nazi? Are you calling me a Nazi? Are you calling me a Nazi? We really have to start calling these people out and say, like, if you don't see the parallels, you're either complicit or you're just dumb. Like, if you want me to stop calling you a Nazi, stop following the playbook. You do not have to follow what they did to a T because they seem to be doing it. Now, sorry about that rant.
Go ahead. This is the place for rants.
I know it. This is the worst timeline we're living in, and it's astounding. So Sleepy Joe, right? You know, he got branded Sleepy Joe early on. Never fell asleep on air. Never fell asleep at a cabinet meeting. I know he stuttered and did not know what to say in a debate with Trump. I get that. I often find myself not knowing what to say after listening to Trump, so I honestly understand how he reacted in that debate. But it's not just Republicans. I expect Republicans to Republican. Again, you expect Nazis to act like Nazis. But what bugs me is MSNBC, CNN, you know, the mainstream media. I have not heard the same rabid, like, why aren't people taking care of Trump? Why is nobody commenting about his mental health status? Why is what the right calls left-leaning media treating Trump the way they treated Biden? And there's so much more there. There's not just smoke, like the guy's on fire and nobody's acting like it.
Yep.
You know, like
Donald Trump has gotten treatment not only from the media, but I think that the courts, when there are, whenever he's charged with fraud or all the other charges he was facing before he was elected, I mean, they would grant stay after stay, appeal after appeal. They bent over backwards so as not to be targeted as anti-Trump. But what they ended up being was pro-Trump because of the way that they handled themselves. Yeah, I agree with you. It is not good. Not good, okay?
No, ma'am. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. We're going to take a break. I do want to share one quick text. You know, the implication is that this super weight loss drug that was given to a 79-year-old man in April, somebody really connected, but nobody will say who, the implication it being Trump. Joan, you know it was Trump that got the weight loss drug, and we can only hope that it has severe repercussions. Ooh, 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 ooh. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
I got a really interesting text from somebody telling me about something I did not know about, and you might be interested in it too, especially if you are on Blue Sky, which I quit Twitter. I also have been trying to avoid most social media, though I know I should really post more often. But Blue Sky is one of the places that I do belong. This person said, "Hi, Joan, not sure if you have mentioned the excellent posts called 250 to 250 on Blue Sky, 1-minute video clips presented by well-known people, and also I've noticed regular people, on their political situation or U.S. history." And I looked it up, and it is amazing. You can record a video, and there's a site that you can post your video. I believe Heather Cox Richardson, the historian, is behind this. And Mazie Hirono, first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from Hawaii. There are all these videos. Some of them are just regular families. There are some family posted a 1-minute video of a family sing-along, "This Land Is Our Land." It is terrific, and it is uplifting, and I highly recommend it. And thank you so much for telling me about this great site. Let's go back to the phone lines. David is on the line from San Francisco. Hello, David.
Hey, well, thanks, Joan. And by the way, if listeners are fans of Woody Guthrie, the Woody Guthrie Center down in, is it Oklahoma, Oklahoma? Right after the 4th, I think the 6th of July, they're going to start maybe even a 10-day Woody Guthrie festival. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're going to have open mics. They're going to have a number of stages, maybe as many as 5 stages, an open mic on some of those stages. So, budding musicians that are fans of Woody Guthrie, head on down.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great time.
Excellent recommendation.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about Trump's motivations regarding the SAVE Act, why he would need to steal the elections. Well, you remember the 34 fraud counts that he was convicted of. He never had to serve time because that conviction came in. I'm trying to remember if it was immediately after he got elected in was it 2016 or I'm trying to remember when it was, but he's due for prison. So that sentencing has been held over until he's out of office, and that's the reason why he has to steal the next election. He needs to get a pardon from someone else, and if I remember right, just the other day, he tried to pardon himself, and that's been tied up in the courts as well. And but this SAVE Act is one of the creepier programs that the Republicans came up with. You remember when Doge got into was it the first day after inauguration, Donald allowed Doge to get into the Treasury, and then, of course, they stole all of our Social Security data. And then they're trying to tie that Social Security data to our voting records. And obviously, each of the counties, each of the states are not supposed to have information on how we voted, but they do have information if we voted. And then, of course, things tied to it. Of course, Social Security is not required to be able to vote, but they were using it as tracking for being able to call out people who didn't voted in, say, like blue areas. And there was a ruling I'm not sure if it was yesterday, but it was down in Texas. A federal judge named Sparkle Sukianon killed the database that Donald Trump built to hoard millions of Americans' Social Security numbers and purge the voting rolls. And in this article, it describes how about 10% of the people that it was trying to purge were already citizens. They were claiming that illegal aliens were voting and all this sort of crap.
Yeah, that's always the claim.
Right. And it turned out that 10% of the people that they were purging were alive and citizens. And so their SAVE Act is exactly this. It's wrong enough that they were able to steal our Social Security data, but then to be able to tie it to our voting ability is another layer of a major scam. So, of course, Donald Trump is due for prison just for putting together a SAVE Act, but we're going to have to convict him of that. And the ability to put a guy that's been convicted of fraud 34 times, and major fraud. You remember, if you remember the development of the case that got him convicted of the 34 times, they actually had something like 1,500 counts of fraud, and they just kind of categorized it down to 38 counts. And he got exonerated of a couple of counts, but 34 convictions of various types of financial fraud. And why the American people were even dumb enough, or why the voting system allowed a guy who was convicted of fraud to be even put up as a presidential candidate is kind of amazing to me. I remember one of Oliver North's cronies, General Secord. It was Poindexter. Poindexter was convicted of financial fraud, and Donald Trump was trying to appoint him again into an administrative post that would have had him as a director. And the Constitution has it set up so that a person convicted of fraud, financial fraud, can never be put in a position of power. And Trump was trying to put Poindexter back in. So, why?
Well, everybody realized that for Trump, running for president was less about wanting to govern again and more about the fact that it was everything. I mean, if he didn't win the presidency, he feared that he would become bankrupt and end up in jail. And now we know that because he did win the presidency, he's been given immunity by the Supreme Court, and he and his family are grifting billions of dollars. So, I agree with you, David. I agree with you 100% about this kind of stuff. And thank you so much for calling in today. Always good to hear from you, David.
Yeah, one last thing. Actually, the listeners should, if they've lost money because of Trump, just the gasoline prices going up, just figure any different angle that you've lost money, put in a claim. This is a sort of a reparations deal, but this is actually, make that rat go bankrupt. If he's going to steal the world's money, if he's going to devalue the U.S. dollar.
Is that when Democrats are back in power, they can stop the grift. They can put things in place. Like, Don Jr. or Eric, they get on the boards of these companies, and suddenly the company gets a multi-million-dollar, no bid government contract. Imagine that. Plus, right? I think they're all playing the stock market. Anyway, I agree with you. There's a lot that needs to be done here. Thank you, David, for the
pleasure.
call.
Take care.
You too. Dan from Joliet texted in, more people got arrested over the reflecting pool than the people all over the Epstein files. Yes, Dan from Joliet, you are correct, at least as far as this country goes. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Ron's on the line from Chicago. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Oh, pretty good today. Trump is now falling asleep even when he's standing up. He did this a couple times last week at the G7 meeting. I know, it's really... And at the luncheon today, he said that anybody who's against the SADC is a communist. So,
yes. I'm going to be talking to Aaron Kleinman from Heartland Signal next, and we're going to talk about the results from the primaries. But I'm telling you right now, communism is a word you're going to be hearing a lot more of from Republicans as younger, more progressive socialist Democrats get elected. Yes, you're right. You're right, Ron.
Yeah, and also Trump was complaining about the gun violence in Chicago, and yesterday he was at a National Rifle Association rally, and it sounded like he wants to have a bill passed that will have let people have assault weapons when they're walking down the street. That's what it sounded to me. So I don't know if I heard that right, but he wants to pass some kind of nationwide bill about guns. I don't know what it was.
No, I think that will we get gun legislation at some point? I think we will. Will I still be alive to see it? Maybe not. I don't know. Thanks, Ron. Always good to hear from you. Bob from Elgin texted in. I told you how Eli Lilly is testing this super duper weight loss drug, and supposedly it was given through a compassionate program, which is usually for people who are terminal. It was given to a 79-year-old well-connected man in April. And Bob from Elgin wants to know, is Eli Lilly sure that it wasn't sleeping pills they gave him instead of weight loss pills? Except that whatever he got, or whoever this man is, got the drug in April, and he's been sleeping long before April rolled around. That, we've seen that. We've seen the video. And I'm sorry, he's not just resting his eyes. He's not just listening. And one time he even said, well, these cabinet meetings are boring. Like that's an excuse for why he fell asleep. Oh, somebody else wants to know the name of that site that somebody else texted in about. It is on Blue Sky, and it is put in the search bar 250 250, and it will come up. 1 minute videos about this country, and you can post one yourself. We are going to take a break for news. We are going to be back with much more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Not just Joan Esposito, but Aaron Kleinman, who writes the Radio Free America weekly newsletter that you can sign up for on heartlandsignal.com. He is our senior political guy, and we always ask Aaron to join us after there have been primaries because he knows where all the data is and where all the bodies are buried. How are you, Aaron?
Oh, my body's very. I mean, I live near Greenwood Cemetery. That was it. We can talk about the cemeteries and all the important New York congressional districts. But
I want to share with you a couple of things that I read last night. Joy Reid. That's it. NBC has called it. Daria Laza wins, defeating the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Mamdani went 3 for 3 tonight. This is a sea change. Mamdani's politics are the base's politics. Get used to it, Democrats. And another post, trying to keep count of Dem incumbents who appear to be going down to challengers from their left tonight. I have 2 Congress members, both New York, 3 state senators, 1 New York, 2 in Maryland, 4 state House members, 3 in New York, 1 in Maryland. It was, and Ezra Levin, the guy who, along with his wife, Leah Greenberg, started Indivisible. Message tonight is clear. The era of spineless corporate Dems in safe seats is ending. We get the party we demand, and we are demanding fighters. And primary season ain't over. More endorsements to come. Whew. Whew. I mean, when I heard that, Mamdani had endorsed these 3 Democratic socialists, and 2 of them were trying to seat, incumbents, I was like, well, he might get 1 or 2 of those people, but there's no way he's going to get all 3. I was wrong, Aaron. I was deeply wrong. What do you think of all this?
Well, I would say before we get too ahead of ourselves, I'd point out that at the congressional level, all these big wins came in New York City. There were left-wing challengers to candidates in swing seats in the New York suburbs. There's a new, they lost. In Utah, there's a new Democratic leading district. A moderate former congressman won that over a left-wing challenger. In Maryland, congressional primaries, a number of incumbents there held on to challengers from their left. In an open seat, the candidate who's endorsed by the outgoing congressman, Steny Hoyer, who'd been in D.C. for more than my entire life, he won too. So it seems like it was very specific to New York City and, maybe urban areas more generally, where kind of the socialist left is really having a great time, but they're kind of having more trouble breaking through elsewhere. That said, let's not take away from the fact that Zoran Mamdani had a great night. He decided that he would endorse in districts where he did well. He didn't endorse, for example, in the open 12th congressional district, which was I think it was one of Cuomo's stronger areas. He didn't endorse in the 6th district, which I'm almost positive Cuomo won, even though there was a strong, challenger there came relatively close. So he's willing to kind of flex his muscle and turn out people who didn't endorse him in his initial run against Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary. But, we'll see how far that goes. But, he still did it. Adriano Espaillat, he'd been a New York institution for a while, but he was losing his grip, and Zoran sensed weakness. He endorsed a candidate who has taken some very outlandish views in the past and was able to get her over the line. And the other two open seats, I live in New York's 10th congressional district. Dan Goldman was always going to lose to Brad Lander, even if Zoran didn't say anything.
I thought Dan Goldman was well liked, and that was one of the races that I thought he wouldn't be unseated. I mean, why? Is he not popular?
So he won in 2022. It was an open seat. He won with I think around 30% of the vote in a very split field. And then in 2024, he faced two really not really well-known challengers, and he barely got 2/3 of the vote against he never really consolidated the vote. He was not really visible in the district. He was more in DC, and then he took positions inimical to the district's views. I mean, I voted for Brad Lander specifically because Dan Goldman voted to deregulate crypto. And I think, I see crypto as basically, breaking the social contract between the government and its people, because the government, part of it is, it secures the consent of the government and provides money to people. A private money supply to me is just, totally goes against the idea of a social democracy. And so the fact that Dan Goldman, who's in a very Democratic seat, voted for that, I'm like, well, I'm never voting for that guy again. And then, of course, AIPAC reared its ugly head, unfortunately, and down the stretch, the campaign got kind of nasty around that. And so, but yeah, he I think he wasn't as pro-Israel as maybe some of his opponents painted him to be, but he still sided with the government of Israel longer than it became politically prudent to do so. And that was probably the biggest reason why he lost, even though my pet issue of crypto was my reason why I voted against him.
You talked about Adrian, Boafo?
Boafo, yeah, well, that was in, sorry.
We've got a clip from his acceptance speech where he talks about Steny Hoyer. Lady B, can you pull up that Adrian Boafo acceptance speech, please?
Y'all, I got to give a special thanks to my mentor, to my friend, Steny Hamilton Hoyer. For 45 years, Steny Hoyer carried the banner of this party. He's been our Danish knight in shining armor, our rock, our steady comfort through times of pain. No one has had the kind of impact on Maryland's 5th congressional district as Steny Hoyer has, and frankly, maybe never will. Thank you, Mr. Hoyer. Thank you, Steny. Y'all, at first glance, it might not seem obvious, but our stories are actually very similar. Steny and I are both the sons of immigrants. We grew up believing in America that drew our parents from across the sea. An America where hard work and responsibility are the keys to every door. An America knowing where possibility has no ceiling. Both of us were inspired by public servants who were transformational for our time. For Steny, it was hearing John F. Kennedy call for a new generation of leadership to accept the torch of democracy. For me, it was watching Barack Obama teach my generation to organize and fight for the America we were promised.
I know of Steny Hoyer, but I kind of thought that his era of influence may have passed us by. Clearly, another thing I am mistaken about, Mr. Kleinman.
Well, he's still, if you've been in office for, again, I was born in 1984, so he had already been in Congress for 2 terms by the time I was born. And now I have joint pain. So that's how long he's been there. And, so in terms of, influence, it's just people in the district trust him. Now, that said, some of the work that Stene's doing is behind the scenes. Adrian Boffo had a lot of outside money coming in. I'm sure that, his relationship with Congressman Hoyer probably helped kind of, make those connections and get those people to weigh in on his behalf. That probably played some role there. Let's not be, too naive about how all this works. But in Maryland, they decided that, hey, there were a lot of different candidates there, a lot of people that, came from outside the establishment, but they went with the establishment pick there.
These New York races prompted a couple of people to share on social media that it is now within the realm of possibility that Chuck Schumer may not get reelected when he is next on the ballot, which I think is 2028. I could be wrong. And it also seems to me, and I didn't read about this anywhere, but just in the video clips that I've seen, it doesn't seem to me that Hakeem Jeffries is thrilled about these 3 victories. There are people who believe that Hakeem Jeffries' potential speakership, if Democrats take back the House, could be at risk with more younger Democratic socialists getting elected. Let's start with Hakeem Jeffries. Do you think if the Democrats take the House, is he a lock for Speaker, or do you think there'll be a fight?
I assume that any fight that takes place will be done behind closed doors, but I don't think of him as, being in any real trouble. Keep in mind as well that there was actually local New York elected was kind of floated the idea of challenging Jeffries himself. And Mamdani actually intervened and said, no, you're not going to take on Hakeem Jeffries. So even though, Jeffries is miffed at losing 2 members of his caucus, he's miffed at getting more members of his caucus that are perhaps less easy for him to corral. I don't think that, it's gotten to the point where they wouldn't vote for him for Speaker. So I don't think that's as much of a concern there.
What about
Chuck Schumer, on the other hand, I would be surprised if he ran for re-election.
Me too, frankly. I think he's going to be like Dick Durbin. He's going to read the writing on the wall and step aside. I mean, but who knows? Schumer surprised me before.
Yeah, he's been in politics for decades, and here's some an exclusive, Joan. I actually saw Chuck Schumer in the park over the weekend. I had my daughter at the playground. He was bringing one of his grandkids there, and I was like, "Hey, don't forget to vote!" And he yelled back, "I voted early!" But also at the same time, there he was. I think he was, enjoying playing with his grandkids and going to DC a lot, having to deal with, everything that goes into politics like that, and also I think the polling for him in a Democratic primary probably is not great. So I think, 2028, that's 30 years in the Senate. That's a long time. He can spend more time with his grandkids at the park. I'll see him there more often.
I was surprised when Zoran Mamdani won the Democratic nomination to run for mayor of New York City. Even then, Chuck Schumer didn't endorse him. Is there bad blood there, do you think?
So I think that they kind of try to be parallel to each other to the extent possible. I think Zoran's main prerogative right now is good. What he needs more than anything is good relationships with Albany, because New York City's budget depends on how much money he gets from the state, from Albany. And so his charm offensive is focused on there. Obviously, he did have his kind of photo op with Trump where he was probably trying to get Trump to not send ICE agents all over the city. But he kind of needs he doesn't need as much of a relationship with Schumer. And so I can't imagine it's like particularly strong relationship between the two of them. But at the same time, I think it's like they don't really need each other that much, especially if Schumer's not going to run for re-election. So we'll see.
One ththing that I read that seemed to me a little bit hyperbolic was especially with these endorsements that Zoran Mamdani was alienating the Democratic Party and alienating the Democratic regulars and cutting off, what should have been a good relationship that will help him in the future. I thought that was a little bit hysterical, but, what do you think?
I mean, I think Zoran, what he did was that he showed how powerful he is. He got three, I think Lander would have won without him. I think Valdez and Reynoso, in the 7th district, Antonio Reynoso is a pretty well-known kind of liberal reform Democrat in Brooklyn. It was an open seat, and Valdez had, a lot of like left-wing energy behind her. But I was surprised at how much she won by. Maybe she would have won without Mamdani's endorsement. I thought Reynoso was still a pretty strong candidate, but and then really again, Chevalier, though, up in the 13th district, I mean, she has taken some pretty controversial, unorthodox stances on the issues. She decried interracial relatives.
Isn't that the stuff that she has apologized for, though?
She did apologize for that, but she's also, there's stuff that was just a few years ago. I mean, she's still 31. I mean, it's not like she was like 15 when she said all this stuff. And, I guess, hey, she's learning, she's growing. But, this is, hopefully she kind of, has grown into someone who's, willing to kind of abandon these kind of extreme views, especially in foreign policy, where a lot of kind of far left kind of tanky stuff is just blame America on everything, which kind of makes them like be Russia apologists, which she seemed to do. So hopefully she kind of realizes, gets on board with liberal internationalism and not reflexive anti-Americanism. But she was not a particularly strong candidate, and Zoran got over the line. And that was a message to everyone in New York, where you want to be on Zoran's good side if you want to win your primary. And so it was a bit of a risk for him by going up against Espaillat, but he came out on top. And now everyone in New York kind of has to, be mindful of playing by his rules too. So It was a good power play by him. He showed us.
Aaron, we need to take a break. I'm talking with Aaron Kleinman. You can sign up for his weekly newsletter by going to heartlandsignal.com. It is called Radio Free America. We are going to continue our talk right after this.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
With me is Aaron Kleinman. He writes a newsletter you can get if you go to heartlandsignal.com. And he is a great studier of political trends and political data. Having said that, Aaron, I'm going to take us on a small tangent just for my own personal curiosity. I did not grow up with social media. And I wonder if I had, what would there be in my posts that I would have to be apologizing for now? You are significantly, despite your aches and pains, you are significantly younger than I am. How long have you been on social media? And have you ever gone back years to see what those early posts were? And if there's anything you need to delete or apologize for?
It's weird because it was almost the opposite worry when I was a kid, because I remember, I was in college when Facebook blew up. And I was on it, when you needed a college email address to be on Facebook. And I remember pretty soon after that, our professors would be like, don't say anything you regret. The internet's forever. And so, you would probably avoid the worst of it. Even back then, even when it was kind of this kind of closed system, just because you didn't want people, and I'm kind of by my nature, I don't want everyone knowing all my business. And so, it's always been a thought. That said, I think people are pretty forgiving about stuff. There are things that, if you're a teenager and you say things, I don't think voters care about what you said as a teenager. I don't think they care what you said when you were in college even. I mean, I think with Chevalier in the 13th district where this came up, I think the issue is that it's not so much that she, said these things in the past, is that she said these things fairly recently. You know, like she was apologizing for Russian aggression in Ukraine after, that was 4 years ago. It was not a very different world then. You know, she was 27 then. She's 31 now. So it's like that matters. I think the time that's elapsed really matters to people.
I remember. Go ahead.
I think, if someone unearths something that, a candidate, like, unfortunately, J.D. Vance and I are basically the same age. If someone unearthed his Facebook
But you look much younger.
Oh, thank you. It's all the skincare routine. But, like, if someone found his Facebook post from 2004, I really don't think anyone would care. We even have text messages from him calling Trump Hitler from 2016, and people think he's like, oh, but he just said, oh, I saw the error of my ways, and so
yeah, right,
yeah, and I mean, I think what matters, especially if you come across as kind of a credible and authentic person, I think people are willing to forgive a lot. So. But yeah, the context of it all matters. The time that's elapsed, how old you were then, how old you are now, that all matters.
I remember one of my girlfriends telling her daughter that she needed to, when she was about to graduate from college, that she needed to go through her Facebook and take down all the pictures of drinking and parties, because there was a time when a potential employer would look at your Facebook and make decisions about you. But by the time my kids were older, I asked them about Facebook once, and they looked at me and they said, Mom, Facebook is for old people. So there.
So they showed us. I left the platform. I think, the interesting thing about Facebook now, we're really digressing here, but Facebook is basically, and really Instagram more than anything is kind of, it's an ad platform. It's a place to sell people stuff. And you see Mark Zuckerberg feeling about, it was the multiverse, it was NFTs, crypto. Now he wants to be, in exchange trading and AI. And it's just, they're flailing about because they're embarrassed that all they really do is that they sell ads. It's an ad sales platform. You sell people stuff. That wonderful skincare routine, you get on Instagram. That's what makes him money, basically. Facebook's it's definitely a passe platform, but they still kind of dominate the ad market. So that's how they've been able to navigate the world like that.
I don't know if Bezos reacted, but from everything I've read, Mark Zuckerberg has not reacted to the fact that apparently Trump has been showing people texts from him and talking about how Bezos and Zuckerberg are kissing his posterior. That seems pretty humiliating. And yet, I guess they just have to take it and walk away.
I mean, what Trump understands more than anything is power, and him being able to humiliate some of the richest men on the planet like that, that's power. That's, all he wants to do is dominate. That's everything about him. That's all he cares about. And so that's what that is. And so, we our tech overlords kissed the ring, and, again, and it's also proof that nobody aligns with Trump and comes away smelling like roses.
Yep.
The people that have made out like bandits under Trump are people either, basically using him to help cash in on some scam, or are just far right ideologues like the Stephen Millers and his kind of, Republican hatchet men, accomplishing their political goals. But if you're just not a political person, or, maybe politically in the middle, and you're trying to do something with Trump, you're just going to get burned.
Yeah, I'm speaking with Aaron Kleinman. We're going to take a break, and after this break, if I try to drag him off on tangents, I hereby give him permission to say, Joan, that's not what we're here to talk about now. We will be right back after this.
Homeowners, is your upper floor too hot in the summer? Are energy bills climbing with every degree? Green Attic can help. With over 15 years of experience and more than 1,000 five-star reviews, Green Attic is a trusted name in Chicagoland for insulation, ventilation, and roofing solutions that make homes more comfortable and energy efficient. They specialize in attic insulation, spray foam, crawl space encapsulation, mold remediation, and solar attic fan installation, all designed to keep your home cooler and improve indoor air quality during the warmer months. Green Attic also offers full-service roofing through Green Attic Roofing. From roof repairs and replacements to flat roofs, commercial roofing, and solar panel installation. The right insulation and ventilation can lower energy use, reduce strain on your HVAC system, and help maintain more consistent temperatures throughout your home. Green Attic backs its work with the industry's only 10-year labor warranty. Schedule your free insulation consultation at greenattic.com or get an instant roofing estimate at greenatticroofing.com. Green Attic, healthy home, happy family.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Regina Cole. For this evening, showers and storms are likely. We could see some strong to severe storms too, with mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures fall back to around 64. A mix of sun and clouds in the forecast as we head toward Thursday with a high in the upper 70s. Isolated rain showers come back in Thursday night, a low around 59 and mostly cloudy. Areas of rain expected into Friday with partly sunny skies, a high around 74 and breezy. Isolated rain showers still Friday night, a low of 61. That's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 66 degrees.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/facility assessment to learn more about energy savings.
Don't turn that dial. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now.
A fair balance where the facts come out.
On WCPT 820.
I'm joined by Aaron Kleinman. We are here to talk about the primaries. We have been talking about New York, but there were, 3 other states, correct me if I'm wrong, Aaron, that had primaries recently?
Yeah, yesterday, obviously, it was New York was the headliner, but you also had Maryland, you had Utah, you had runoffs in South Carolina. Then, of course, the week before, you had the runoffs in Alabama and Georgia and the Oklahoma primary. So, a lot of those were pretty red states. And so not a ton of action on the Democratic side, but you kind of saw, the far right continues to do pretty well in those states. And, in Georgia in particular, you had a really, really extreme Senate nominee, Mike Collins, who, I think the last scandal he was involved in was that he mocked a Republican consultant working for another candidate because his wife attempted self-harm after Matt Lauer made her one of his victims. That's the kind of character you're dealing with.
He what?
Yeah. There's a Republican consultant whose wife was one of Matt Lauer's victims, and she talked about that being a very dark period in her life and how she attempted self-harm during that. And Collins's campaign made fun of this guy for his wife going through that.
How could
That's the Republican Senate nominee in Georgia.
Stupid? How could anybody be that stupid? That's hard to believe. I don't understand that. That is jaw dropping.
It is, but here's the far right has one core value right now, and it's might makes right. It's inimical to democracy. It's inimical to what this country is based on, but that's what they believe. Might makes right. So that means that if you sense any weakness, perceived weakness in anyone that's against you, then you go for the jugular. So when you see a Republican consultant, saying something about your campaign that you don't like, you just go for the jugular. It doesn't matter. Like the ideas of kind of morality kind of go out the window when might makes right. And so that's what the right has on offer in Georgia, the idea that might makes right.
So there wasn't the backlash that you and I would expect from that? Is that what you're saying? That some people were just like, well, whatever.
He blamed it on a staffer and fired the staffer.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, what happened to the buck stops here. And so, and it goes to show you the kind of culture of the right. I think that it's an excellent illustration for everyone out there of that culture and of them, departing from really a belief in kind of, a common, kind of shared humanity, and the idea that, ultimately you're getting into government to help people. It's really just again, what we talked about with Trump earlier, it's just all about domination at any cost and trying to humiliate your opponents. That's really the animating desire of the Republican Party right now.
I was about to go off on a tangent, and I am holding myself back. I will, if we have time, I will get to it later. Tell me about more primary results that we should be paying attention to.
Well, another thing in Georgia that happened was they had been talking about using an upcoming special session to redraw maps, but they were getting wary of it because Georgia is still a very purple state, and Republicans, especially ones in perhaps suburban Atlanta, kind of hard to hold on to. We're worried about really motivating Democrats to vote in the midterms by basically destroying voting rights. And so there was a far-right lieutenant governor who was really kind of pushing that. He was one of Trump's henchmen in trying to steal the 2020 election. But he actually lost his runoff. You can actually beat one of Trump's henchmen if you were an actual billionaire, like Rick Jackson. Yeah. And so they kind of now that they don't have to appease this guy who might be their governor going forward, they just dropped it. So they actually ended up, so we're not going to get new congressional districts in Georgia before 2028 unless they do a lame duck session. And if Democrats can flip the governorship, which right now, according to polls, that they are actually favored to do, then that kind of puts the end on a re-gerrymander of Georgia, thankfully. But there's still a lot of risk out there. Though also in South Carolina, there's a runoff for the governor's race there. A lieutenant governor got Trump's backing by saying she would support a gerrymander, and she ended up losing the runoff. Obviously Trump still has a pretty firm control on Republicans, but
South Carolina, isn't that where the former Navy admiral ran on the Democratic side?
Yes.
I can't remember her name right now.
Yeah, in Pete Hegseth's attempt to resegregate and remake all male the military, he basically got rid of a female admiral. I think her last name is LaCour. She is running in the 1st Congressional District, which is around Charleston. It's a Republican-leaning area, but it's one of those kind of, very well-educated Republicans, more likely to depart from the party than other districts in the South. And Democrats won an earlier iteration of the district in 2018. So she's a compelling candidate. It's an open seat. So that's one to watch as well, especially because, as someone who, patriotic Americans served in the military, her country basically betrayed her. More or less by firing her for her gender. And now she's running for Congress. So we'll see what happens there.
And I have to believe that what will also play a role, maybe a small role, but nonetheless a role in that election, is the fact that not only Democrats, but Republicans are appalled by Pete Hegseth.
Yeah, and that's a district too with a pretty significant military presence. In the Charleston area, a lot of defense contractors too. Boeing, I think, has a pretty significant presence there. And so, if military communities are kind of fed up with Hegseth, that could be one to watch too. Another thing to keep in mind, like in 2020, for example, some of the areas that trended most strongly away from Trump were counties that had big military bases in them. And so, I think everyone kind of snapped back in 2024, but it'd be interesting to see if that continues, because I don't know if you saw, but there's a flu outbreak in an Air Force processing center in San Antonio.
Imagine that.
Because he dropped the flu vaccine. He dropped the vaccine mandate that had been in place since the end of World War II, and now our airmen are getting sick. Pete Hegseth likes to pretend that he's this student of history, and we're doing the Crusades, and but I don't know if you read anything about history, like Napoleon, for example. But Napoleon, he would have loved vaccines. Oh man, vaccines would have been a really great thing for him when he was on his Russia campaign. So.
And I believe I read this morning that because where the base where they had the huge flu outbreak, they went back at that base and said, okay, here you gotta take it. But I read this morning that very quietly, Pete Hegseth has reinstated the mandate for the entire armed services that, yeah, indeed, they do need to get and have to get flu shots.
Yeah, I mean, in World War I, more American soldiers died from disease than combat, and that was the last big flu outbreak. Was also
1918.
Yeah, and so hopefully he learned from this. But I mean, he's putting troops in harm's way. He's reckless, and so I don't, I won't pretend that that there aren't people in the military who agree with him, but I think that overall, if you're your average rank and file enlisted man is seeing this guy thinking, what the heck is going on? And so maybe you will see military voters move toward the Democratic Party, and we'll know more in November. But it's something to keep an eye on.
Supposedly, Trump or the administration told Stephen Miller, who was, of course, the driving force behind all the ICE nonsense, that Stephen Miller was told to basically cool it at least till after the midterms. Sooner or later, they're going to have to say the same thing to Mr. Hegseth, because every time it seems to go quiet. Today, Wall Street Journal, Hegseth cuts Army commander's storied career short as part of a shakeup. And this was a guy who other people in the military recommended should be moved up, should be promoted to a bigger job. And instead, Hegseth has decided to request his retirement. And I didn't realize this. Maybe you had seen this. Apparently, Hegseth is doing this not just to get rid of anybody who seemed too supportive of DEI or any women or any African Americans, but apparently Hegseth has decided that we have too many leaders, we have too many generals, we have too many admirals. There shouldn't be so many people in charge. So his apparent goal is to reduce the number of generals, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, whatever. He thinks there's too many of them, and if he has his way, there will be fewer going forward. If he keeps doing stuff like this, he is going to keep reminding people of what a dweeb he is, and I can't help but think that that's going to hurt Republicans.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about people who join the military, especially the people in the officer class. If you're joining, a military officer, the people in those roles, they probably have their choice of a lot of different private sector positions, ones where they can decide where they're going to live, ones where they get paid a lot more. But you know what? They find they have a calling to go into the military, and kind of part of that deal, part of why they do that, part of why they forego years of making more money and, living somewhere nicer than Fort Cannon or mine at North Dakota, is that, eventually you can kind of get paid off by having, by being kind of a high ranked military, being a general, being an admiral, and, really being able to make an impact like that, and just kind of coming in and just cutting that career path short, I think is a real blow to morale. I don't understand, especially he's not just doing it through attrition. And, I understand being we're too top heavy, we're going to kind of, let people retire, not backfill them, but we still want to kind of preserve the career path. But kind of this wanton slash and burn type thing is just going to be horrible for morale. And, the military history shows that your troops and your officers' morale is actually pretty important.
You would think. Aaron Kleinman and I are going to take a break. We're going to come back with more talk about the recent primaries and other things right after this.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Hi, it's Joan Esposito, and I want to tell you about 120 Life. 120 Life is a drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. My mom struggled with high blood pressure for much of her adult life, and for many of us, high blood pressure runs in the family. 120 Life is a great tasting fruit and vegetable drink designed to improve your blood pressure. Put it to the test for a couple of weeks. Check your blood pressure. See if it works for you. Some people reported results in as little as 2 weeks. And I like 120 Life because I like a fruit drink that isn't sugary sweet. To try it, go online to 120life.com. That's 120life.com. If your high blood pressure doesn't come down in 2 weeks, you can get a full refund. And you can get a 20% discount. Use the code JOAN, Joan, for 20% off your order. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
With me is Aaron Kleinman. We are talking about the recent primaries and certain races that we should be paying attention to, certain races that might be indicative of larger sways in political voting. Aaron, what else should we be looking at?
Well, there's also outside of New York City, an hour north, in the suburbs, there was the New York 17th district. It's one of their top targets. It's a Republican who holds a seat that Kamala Harris narrowly carried. And to me, it was really interesting there was that you had a bunch of kind of leftish candidates, but they didn't really break through. And the top really two candidates were both relatively moderate. And the nominee, Kate Conley, she's a former Biden defense aide. And so, again, you kind of contrast this with what happened in New York City. And so you're kind of seeing this dichotomy of, New York City Democrats seem to really be pushing very far left, but also even just an hour north, there's not that impetus. And so, I think what's going to be really important for the party, not as much in 2026, but in 2028, is coming up with kind of a way to appeal to these two, divergent wings of the party right now, where you have a really kind of activist left in urban areas. You also saw that in like Seattle and Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles, where socialist candidates are on the rise. And you're going to need those voters in general elections. And so how do you appeal to them, but also, kind of suburban voters who aren't really on board with that? And so that's something to keep an eye on.
We talk a lot about primary results. I want to talk to you about polling. Polling used to be pretty indicative of what was going to be happening. Then people stopped having landlines and they went to cell phones, which were harder to get. And people became more suspicious or less willing to share their thoughts with a stranger. And suddenly polling seemed to not be reliable. I mean, there were races where, you'd be told that somebody was up by 6 points, and then in 24 hours, their opponent beats them by 20 points. What do you think of polling? As we get closer to the midterms, I always say that I don't want to rely on polling. I don't want to talk about polling, but I always end up talking about polling, Aaron. So how should I thread that needle?
Well, they've gotten to the point now where they realize that, just landline polling that you mentioned, very few people use exclusively landline polling anymore, because you're right. People don't pick up the phone. I actually do, my phone tells me if it might be like a political call, and I always pick up because I just love hearing what pollsters are saying. And that Lander-Goldman race, I think I got polled like 4 times because I'm one of the only crazy people who actually picks them up, which should give you an idea of kind of the problems with polling, because I am not, a representative voter by any means. There's that problem. But the polling companies have, figured out methods of using online panels, of using text messaging to kind of get more representative samples. Like New York Times and Siena, they did a very good job polling in 2024.
So
they had a pretty good.
So you're saying we should look at who's doing the polling, like New York Times Ipsos poll?
Yeah, it really kind of depends on, there's a lot that goes into it, but I would say, don't let polling trick, it's like, are you going to, if polling's like, are you going to believe your lying eyes? Then don't believe it, right now we're headed for what should be a pretty good Democratic midterm. And, if you get a single poll out there that's saying, actually, it won't be, maybe a bit of skepticism is warranted there. If, someone's like, actually, the electorate is going to be, a majority of people will have supported Trump. Well, I don't know about that. So, polling, it's a tool, but it's not the only tool that you have to analyze what's going on. And so, it is something to be mindful of. Also, again, use aggregators. Unfortunately, 538 got shut down. But there's a site called 50+1. You can check it out. They have all the polls that you need, and you can get a broad picture of kind of where polling is. And then, I would also just kind of be mindful of where the national polls are at and focus less on kind of local ones. So like an individual House race poll can certainly be interesting, but the national picture is really going to be what's driving most of the results. And so that's kind of how I would say. But, polls, they can be accurate. You just need to kind of, use your mind, be thoughtful with that.
Well, what I do, because, as we get closer to the midterms, there's going to be more and more polling. And when I see some poll results, even if they're widely disseminated, but if the polling was done by America First Polling, and that's not a group I've heard of before, I try to dig into who is this organization, and sometimes it'll say, Republican Polling Company, or this or that. And so you sort of know where they're coming from, though theoretically, if polling is done correctly, it shouldn't really matter whether the person doing it is Republican or Democrat, because it should be straight down the road. But we all know that sometimes which questions you ask and how you word them has a lot to do with how people answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of this very simple thing that I do and a lot of people do. It's not scientific by any means, but it kind of works. And it's if you see a campaign's internal poll, or if you see like a Democratic or Republican sponsored poll, just knock a few points off that margin. Like it's not scientific. It's something that I've learned, born of experience. Also, if the poll has a really high number of undecideds close to the election, throw it out. Like, I remember seeing a lot of polls in like 2024, like a month out, it'd be like, oh, it's 44 or 42. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not 44 or 42 anywhere. Way too many people made up their minds. And so make sure that you're actually seeing with ignore the especially as October comes closer, the margin's less important than kind of like actual vote share. When you want to be seeing a lot fewer undecideds then to kind of be getting a more credible picture of what's going on. And so, but yeah, there are thoughtful ways to engage with polling. It's certainly not, the only thing, but I think if you use an aggregator like 50+1 and you're kind of mindful of, the agendas behind everything and making sure that you're using your common sense and engaging with other data coming in as well, that, it can be useful.
I know that one of the states that you mentioned was Utah. I'd like to revisit Utah right now because the New York Times felt it was important enough to do a big story. Utah Senate president loses primary after data center backlash.
Well, it's not just that. The data center thing first, I think Kevin O'Leary, the guy behind Shark Tank, / the antagonist in Marty Supreme, wanted to build like the world's biggest data center in rural Utah. People there hated it, and it contributed to this guy's loss. But also, and again, get ready for something kind of gross here. He supported a bill that would lessen sentences for people who commit basically sexual abuse of a minor, and it's a bill that would have impacted the sentencing of one of his grandkids.
Ugh.
He says he didn't know that the bill would have that impact. I will let you decide whether you think there is enough of a tie there for that to be true or not. So yeah. And the data center thing, getting back to that, it's really interesting because, data centers themselves, they're, big and, certainly you don't want to give like a tax breaks to give one, but they're not going to kind of like cause that much harm to your local area. The water use thing's kind of overblown, but I think they're just kind of this tangible element of kind of the powerlessness that people feel. They've been told for years now that AI is coming to take over, and that was a great marketing campaign to get all these AI companies that have these massive valuations. But now they're facing down the barrel of the public really distrusting them, really not liking them. And even though the data centers themselves are like relatively anodyne compared to like what the AI companies actually do, they've become the vector for that backlash, even among the right. You even see, like I saw an interview with a woman in Texas who's like, I'm a Republican, I'll vote for any Democrat that gets the data centers out of my backyard. So it's this really interesting cultural moment where it's kind of this way to people have finally found a way to kind of feel like they might have some power over tech companies, and they're using it.
You know, Aaron, this is just a tiny tangent. Can I have a tiny tangent right here?
Absolutely.
The New York Times article, because I don't know Utah. I don't get a local Utah paper or a local Utah newsletter. So I rely on, I read the Wall Street Journal, I read the Guardian US, I read the New York Times, as for most of my national and international, where I begin. The New York Times wrote about this guy's defeat, J. Stewart Adams, and nowhere in the article does it say that there was any factor other than data centers. It seems to me that the New York Times, maybe it's the fault of the reporter, maybe it's the fault of the editor. I don't know if it's the fault of the New York Times and they just didn't want to go to something that was unsavory. But what you talked about with the bill to make lighter sentences for sexual predators, that seems pretty important to me. And if that was one of the controversies in this race, kind of seems to me that it should have been a part of the New York Times article on that. I feel a little concerned about that. Should I?
I don't. Maybe it didn't come up when that reporter went out there to Box Elder County, Utah, to talk to the voters. You know, it's always possible. Or maybe they came out there really just trying to talk to voters who are caring about the data center, because that's, the data centers are tied into the national economy in a way that really kind of, abuse of minors in Utah is not. And so, they have that national eye on things. And that's why, folks, you got to check out heartlandsignal.com, where we have an eye on what really matters at the state level. The New York Times, bless their hearts, they don't have that eye. They're caring about the national angle. But, we here, and then of course at WCPT 820, we want to make sure that, you are getting the local angle, that you are getting, what's going on the ground, because it can, this illustrates, I don't think there's a nefarious agenda by the New York Times, but it just shows you how when you take a national view of all these issues, some really important local stuff can get overlooked.
And what you're saying is also a part of the advice I give listeners. Never rely on just one source for information. Check and cross-check in different outlets, different publications, whatever, and you will then have a feel what of all their reporting, what's the same, what's different, who has something that the others don't have. And you really do need to be a big media consumer, I think, to be able to think critically about a lot of this stuff. And Radio Free America is a great thing to add to your news diet.
That's right. Thanks so much for the plug, Joan. Everyone, please check it out, heartlandsignal.com. It's also, you can listen to WCPT 820 on the site as well. So all of your needs met in one place. What a wonderful website.
What a wonderful website. Aaron Kleinman and Joan Esposito. What could be better? Aaron, thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me back, Joan. Take care. Have a good 4th.
You too. We are going to take a break for news. We will be back with more after that.
The Thom Hartmann radio program provides all of the intelligence, information, and insight you'll need to win the water cooler wars. Weekdays 11 to 2 right here on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
You hear him on Stephanie Miller. You hear him on Sirius Radio. And when we are very, very lucky, you hear him here on WCPT. The lovely John Fugelsang joins us. John, how are you?
I get all my news from Joan Esposito, all of it. I get my fashion and hygiene tips as well from Joan, and from the Weatherology Weather Center. I rely on a lot of weatherology as well. They're the whole center of
Jennifer
weatherology.
Fucitsky.
Hey, Joan, I was trying to see which one of us is going to be more arrogant about having the cooler city, the NBA Finals or the Obama Center. It's been a pretty good week for New York and Chicago.
Boy, it surely has been a great week for our two cities, and also for a lot of cities around the country. I don't know if you've seen some of the videos that Scots, people from the UK, Aussies, New Englanders, or New Zealanders, people from France, people from Italy, they're all posting these videos like, hey, this country is really great. We've been lied to. We may hate America, but we don't hate Americans.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
It
good.
has
Well,
been
maybe
a
they can come
love
over here and
fest.
maybe they can come over here and help us with our Algae terrorist problem because America's under siege again. We need a
Yes.
real strongman leader
Yes,
to
indeed.
deal with the Algae terrorists.
Hey, did we ever find that vandal who Donald Trump said there was video of a vandal making a more than 300-foot line scrape on the bottom of the reflecting pool?
The 300-foot slit is what the president described it as. What it was George Soros under cover of night, while Hunter Biden distracted the police. This shadowy cabal of algae extremists were sneaking up to a giant public fountain to deploy phosphorus because Donald Trump's administration can't win the war on pond scum. This is what it's come to, Joan Esposito. We're losing the war. These people don't believe in climate science, but they want us to believe in like aquatic Antifa. Like it's, oh my God, they're deploying phosphorus. These extremists hiding in a cave, and they're not going to attack the Congress, Joan Esposito. They're not going for the White House. They're not going to attack the Pentagon. No, they're going to put algae in a pond.
You know, one of my texters today texted in that more people have been arrested at the reflecting pool than have been arrested because of things in the Epstein files here in the United States.
That is correct.
Isn't that? And I saw
an
something
Olympic
this
athlete,
morning.
yes.
That workers were putting a big fence around the pool. Did you see that?
Yes, because now people are walking over and they're picking up pieces of evidence that are peeling off of it and saying, look at this, and they're being charged with peeling paint off of a structure that's now famous around the world for its peeling paint. This is what it's come to. No Epstein arrests, but the reflecting pool now has a body count of 3 dead ducks, Joan. I mean, now the war on ducks. Now, you know what? It just got real for me. Like now it's Donald Trump, duck killer. They're killing the ducks, Joan Esposito. They are killing the ducks. And that pool has received more treatments than Wayne Newton's face. I mean, I don't know what they're going to think is going to happen. This is the perfect metaphor. I keep thinking Donald Trump can't have a better metaphor, Joan, for all of it. You know, like when he was first getting sworn in for the second term and we saw that Elon Musk micro-penis truck in flames outside a Trump hotel, and I thought, oh, you're not going to see a better metaphor than that. And then we inaugurated a racist on MLK Day, and I thought, oh, you're not going to see a better metaphor. And then he tore down the East Wing of the White House, and I keep thinking, my God, I'm overdosing on metaphor, but this, the fact that the reflecting pool is dark and murky and a symbol of incompetence and not listening to experts. I mean, it's just beautiful. It is the perfect representation of Donald Trump's second term. I think they should keep it this way, and they should keep the claw fighting on the White House lawn as well. Just keep it going. That's what this administration is.
You know there's going to be a metaphor every other week. Like, what about the tarp in front of the Kennedy Center?
Oh, the tarp in front of the Kennedy Center. Yeah, I mean, it's like, look at, he's just defacing buildings, just trying to leave his mark. And decent men leave their mark by fighting for hard-to-pass legislation that improves the lives of the masses. That's what you do, and then you die, and they put their names on buildings. Donald Trump's not going to ever do that. He knows they're not going to put his name on buildings after he dies, which is why he's trying so hard to get his filthy scrawl put on buildings while he's still here. Normally, other people want to do it to honor you because of things you did.
You know, I read that when he was first talking about this grotesque arch that he wants to build on the road to Arlington, his original thought was that there would be something like the Arc de Triomphe, but on top of it would be a fist.
Yeah, I heard the same thing. Yeah,
oh my
I was like,
God.
How much time did you spend with Roy Cohn as a young man, Donald?
Good.
Yeah.
Why is he incapable?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Of having even an inkling of how ridiculous he is. When they gave him the FIFA World Peace Prize, anybody with any kind of semblance of sense would have been humiliated by that.
You don't understand the male ego at this point. At this point in late stage capitalism, you don't understand the fragility of weak men. You don't understand that all bullies are cowards. You still don't understand a child born in privilege who's never been challenged to have to become a real man. A guy who's been protected for his horrible behavior his entire life, first by money, then by celebrity, then by political power. Why he can't be a real man, why there's no confidence, and it's nonstop lies. I mean, listen to how he talks to people. You realize he spends every moment of his day around people that he pays to tell him he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't hang out with people who call him out on stuff. You can't do that. So this guy's not tested at all intellectually. They're just like, I mean, we heard that he's not even getting briefings on the Iran war. They were showing him little TikTok videos of things blowing up. Like our president is being handled like a toddler with an iPad at a public restaurant at this point. So, I mean, this is what we're dealing with. This is who the guy is. This is who he's always been. And I'm all in favor of working around it and just acknowledging it. It's not going to get better. And the Republicans know he's hurting them in the midterms. What he did today with the housing bill, this is the first time you've seen these Republicans do anything all year that they can actually brag about. Right? I mean, when we get to Election Day, it's going to be a rough for them, and that's why they're trying to cheat so hard. That's why they've got to cheat and redistrict and have Texas do what they're doing, because they know the voters are angry and gas prices will still be high. So they passed this housing bill. It's bipartisan. It's hugely popular. And Man Baby today says, no, I'm going to kill it. I'm not going to sign it unless you pass the SAVE Act, which is never going to pass the House. They're never going to have 60 votes for the SAVE Act.
Before this big luncheon with the Senate Republicans, a couple of them, John Thune among them, were talking about, well, what is it you're going to talk to the president about? And Thune was like, well, we have to have some real tough conversations with the president. For instance, we have to make him understand that there are not the votes for the SAVE Act. Even if we get rid of the filibuster, the votes aren't there. It is numbers. And apparently part of the problem with that is Senator Lee out of Utah apparently keeps telling Trump, well, we could get the SAVE Act through if the Senate would just work harder on it.
Oh, I know. But I mean, that's been his job. He's been dispatched. He's Trump's little vassal to run around and try to pass the SAVE Act. That's like he's been deputized by Trump to try to pass it. Of course, when Mike Lee's not complaining that that Mormons were stripped of religious status by Pete Hegseth's Pentagon. Did you see that? I voted for this. I voted for Donald Trump to go harass other religious minorities, not mine. Yeah,
Tell me, I missed this latest Hegseth move.
Pete Hegseth has stripped religious status, recognition status, from over 100 different faiths, including many Native American faiths and many different Christian faiths have been just kind of bundled into one called Christian, including Mormonism. So Mike Lee's been actually playing victim over this. He never minded when other religious minorities were being persecuted, but now it's about freedom. So they've been going around trying to sell the SAVE Act, and the SAVE Act is never going to pass. Y'all know what this is. Your audience is smarter than me. This is the act that does to women what all the voter ID acts do to minorities and poor folks. This is the one where if you've ever changed your name, ladies, due to marriage or divorce or whatnot, you better have your original birth certificate, because if you don't, they won't let you vote. All they can do is try to find ways to kill democracy by 1,000 cuts. Shave off a few here with the voter ID law, shave off a few here now that we've gutted the Voting Rights Act with the pre-clearance rules, shave off a few here now that we've gutted the Voting Rights Act and you can redistrict and, with mail ballots, drop-off locations, how can we make it a little bit harder in every single district? Because Joan, a little here and a little there adds up to all the difference in our system when not enough people participate. So Trump is committed to this. And I just thought, my God, remember the first time he was impeached? It was because he was blackmailing our ally to help him cheat in an election. First time he got impeached, he was withholding arms shipments that were approved to Zelensky, our Ukrainian ally, unless Zelensky agreed to go on American TV and announce that there was an investigation of Joe Biden in Ukraine. And would a Ukrainian president go on American TV to announce this? But that was the deal. There was never an investigation. Trump just wanted Zelensky to announce an investigation on American TV to hurt Biden.
Yeah.
And then the whistleblower leak came and
just
he
say
got
it.
impeached.
That was what he kept saying over and over again.
This is exactly
you don't actually have
what
to
he
do
did to
anything.
Zelensky. He is blackmailing, using this housing bill, which he knows these Republicans need to have something they've done this year to campaign on for these midterms. So he's willing to blackmail his own ally, just like Zelensky, to help him cheat in the next election. This is what he does. It's low-rent Cosa Nostra stuff.
Well, and, usually, especially like look at Mike Lee. Mike Lee is carrying your water. Theoretically, you would look out for somebody like that. And then suddenly you let Hegseth strip the Mormon religion out of a recognized religion. He doesn't. Has no
you're
loyalty.
implying that you're implying Trump believes in loyalty. They talk about Trump and loyalty, but loyalty is something that goes both ways. Trump needs obedience. These are groveling child men who only find out too late. They're never going to get something back from this guy. They're all private contractors who don't know yet that Trump's never going to pay the bill. All of them. They're all like wives. They think he meant the marriage vows, and they think the more obedient and loyal they are to him, the more they'll be saved. And we know that's not true. He will throw all of them under the bus because he's at his core as selfish as they are.
The rationale is he did that to them, but he likes me. He respects me. He's not going to do that to me.
Yeah, they're all
that has to be the mindset because they keep.
Yeah, and that's how. Yeah, and by doing that, Trump doesn't respect them. Right? He doesn't. By doing that, by being the puppet he needs you to be, you are being set up because he already does. He knows you're disposable now. Why do you think? In the first term, they said, well, at least he had adults in the room. He didn't really have adults in the room. He had adult film stars in the room, but they had a couple. But here, it's all been henchmen, flunkies, and fall guys. Like, oh my God, why is he only hiring unqualified idiots in the second term? Because unqualified idiots are never going to say, Mr. President, that's not legal, you can't do that. Unqualified idiots are going to let him do whatever he wants and then take the blame when it doesn't work out. Pam Bondi went away to Christie Nome Island because she paid the price for what Trump did with Epstein. Pete Hegseth, when he gets fired, he'll be fired because of Trump's policies in Iran. When Kash Patel gets fired, it's because a Trump policy has come back to embarrass Trump, and he needs Kash to be the fall guy. They don't know yet. They were hired to be sacrificial fall guys, all of them.
Yep. And,
and J.D. Vance really doesn't know it.
Well, but J.D. Vance, I think J.D. Vance is beyond caring because I think J.D. Vance, I was talking about this at the beginning of the show. No matter where you see him now, he's got this smug little smile. And to me, it's like, I know this guy isn't going to live out his whole term. So sooner or later, buddy, I don't care what you say about me. Sooner or later, I'm president.
He has the smug demeanor of a man who's actually seen Donald Trump's cholesterol numbers. You know what I mean?
John, some of the news outlets I follow have started doing these stories where they'll go to red districts and they'll find people who voted for Trump and they'll say, well, you voted for Trump or maybe you voted for Trump, every election you had the opportunity. Like, what do you think of him now? And so many of them are like, well, he said he was going to bring down gas prices and he hasn't. And there was supposed to be no more wars. So I don't know. I'm kind of soured on him. And I'm thinking to myself, there was already evidence that this guy was a liar, that this guy would say anything to any audience if he felt that it would give him points. He was cruel beyond belief. He was a wretched human being. And now you're turning on him because you're spending, $5 a gallon for gas. I know, John.
No, that's not why they're turning on him.
We have to welcome these people back. We have to. If they're willing to turn the page, we should be. But
I wouldn't phrase it that way. I would say emotional growth should not be met with smug liberal I told you so's. But let's be honest, they're not turning on Trump because of gas prices. They're turning on Trump because very gradually Rupert Murdoch is letting them know it is time to slowly begin turning on Trump. That's it. These people still watch Fox News all day. Rupert Murdoch will continue to tell them what their values are. He will continue to program and groom them into knowing what infuriates them, what powerless minority they see as an existential threat this week, what ridiculous lie from WMDs in Iraq to Barack Obama's citizenship to a stolen 2020 election, what ridiculous lie they will swallow and defend. Rupert Murdoch programs these people. We keep wondering, when are these MAGAs going to be done with Trump? No. When are the oligarchs? When are the billionaires who actually own this country, when are they going to be done with this embarrassing little guy? Trump's not an oligarch. He owns golf courses oligarchs golf at. And I've been saying for a long time, like, when is the 0.01% going to be done with this guy? They got their tax cut. They got their incredible deregulation. They got their crypto loophole. They don't really need this clown anymore. And they could have Peter Thiel's little ghoul serve out the rest of the term if they need it. I mean, Murdoch publishes the Jeffrey Epstein birthday card in the Wall Street Journal. And Trump sues him for $22 billion. And the next day, Murdoch shows how seriously he takes this lawsuit by announcing in the Wall Street Journal that Pam Bondi told Trump he was in the Epstein files last May of 2025. That's how much contempt Rupert has for Trump. That's how scared Rupert was of a $22 billion lawsuit, right? He's already turned on Trump in the Wall Street Journal editorial pages, and you'll see the Kilmeades. You'll see occasionally on Fox and on Fox
Well, you
Business.
know what I've seen
They're beginning to actually let sunlight come through, but don't be deceived. When they're done with Trump, it's not going to be any different than when Bush and Cheney left. They'll still control the minds of all these people. Folks in cities don't understand, maybe you do, how much of America has Fox News around them all day like an IV drip, getting this brainwashing all day long. So, I mean, that's what's going to happen next. And Rupert will still control their brains after Trump is gone. And when Trump's gone, it's going to be like Bush and Cheney. He'll take all the blame for all the evil policies, and the entire infrastructure that enabled it is going to stay right there in the House and Senate.
I think that we are already, for a long time, the Wall Street Journal has been a bit of a thorn in Trump's side. And people explained it to me as, well, the Wall Street Journal, that audience isn't keen on Trump. So that's why Rupert has them write the way they do. But the people
the audience Trump has spent his entire life trying to impress. Trump spent his entire life.
Love Trump, and that's why he supports Trump there. But in the last few weeks, not at night where it's all the big stars and the opinion, but during the day, there have been a number of shows and anchors where they have said, why are we in Iran? We don't belong there. There's during the day, they are starting to turn the tide. It hasn't come much to prime time yet, but.
That's right. That's the deal. I mean, Rupert Murdoch is he's a thought maker. They have so much of white America in the grip of this propaganda arm that's not really about conservatism. I mean, Fox News has never been conservative. Conservatives would have kicked Bush to the curb during the first term. Conservatives would have kicked Trump to the curb. It's right-wing control of society. That's all Christian nationalism is and fundamentalism. They don't care about Jesus. They despise the teachings of Jesus. They don't care about God or Satan or religious freedom. It's conservative Christian control over society. That's what they care about. It's their creed.
There was a study I read about it. I'd love to get your insight into this. There was a study that I read about where they took, I don't know how many white male Fox viewers, and they paid them I believe it was a 2-week period, they paid them to watch CNN. And they had a way, I can't remember the methodology, but they had a way to monitor it so nobody was cheating. And they had them... they assessed all their political views before it happened, and they assessed all of their political views after 2 weeks of watching CNN. And there was a significant shift in every subject. But the part that dumbfounded me is after it was over and after they stopped getting paid, they all went back to Fox.
Oh, of course, yeah.
What do you mean, of course, You get
did.
this station that's telling you to be angry all the time, and then another station that's kind of giving you the truth, and you want to go back to being angry all the time?
How many people do you know that choose denial over unpleasant reality? Come on now. This is America. I mean, this is America. This is our national religion, is playing dumb about reality. You know that. I'm not surprised at all that they would do it. I mean, we've seen the studies that show that very often Fox News viewers are more misinformed than people who watch no news whatsoever. It's news entertainment. It's absolute garbage. Sean Hannity, I mean, my God, Sean Hannity, a generation ago, was lying, saying that Americans who opposed the war in Iraq hated this country and were with the terrorists. Sean Hannity had every racist liar in the world on for years to say the first black president wasn't really one of us. Sean Hannity pushed the lies about Smartmatic and then said under oath he knew he was spreading lies. And we have no mechanisms in society for any kind of accountability for this. They just poison the minds of our racist grandmas and grandpas, and it just gets worse all the time. This is the division. Donald Trump is just the hood ornament on this car. This is what they've been doing. Donald Trump is the logical end result. I mean, how are they going to get crasser than that? It's going to have to be Kid Rock's hepatitis will be the next Republican president after this.
You know, I used to think because the demographics of cable news are old anyway, but the oldest of all of them is Fox, where the last time I saw a survey, like the average age was 70. And so I kind of thought to myself, well, you know, so in the coming years, it will be less influential because basically they'll all start all dying off. But I'm not sure that's true. My friend's mother...
America finds a way to make new ones, don't we? We find a way to keep manufacturing those white folks.
Has been a liberal her whole life. She's been, over the last couple years, though, she has started turning on Fox and leaving it on all day.
Yeah,
and my friend said her mother is now angry and cynical. And she has said to her mom, you know, you need more than Fox in your life. And she can't. Yeah. So how is it that they're recruiting? What is it? What is the appeal?
Oh, I mean, outrage is a drug. Anger is a drug. Being told that you're superior all the time. I mean, that's what Fox sells. Fox is like fundamentalist Christianity or fundamentalist Islam. It doesn't sell the complexities of life. It doesn't talk about the challenges we all face together. Fox is anti-Jesus to the core, but it's a very pure form of religion. It's pure. It's all superiority. It's all you're good and these people are bad. And these marginalized groups are trying to take things from you. And once America was a certain way and now America's not that way anymore. And only a strongman leader can protect us all. I mean, it's pure fascism 101 propaganda. And it's very seductive to be told you're right all the time, you know, and have flags waving and be told that we're trying to get America back to this mythic past that we are sure existed at some time somewhere for all of us that never actually existed.
Yeah.
It's
well, that's
drug.
Kind of what you wrote about in The Nation.
It's like the opioid crisis. Oh,
yeah,
thank
this
you.
idea that people have today that somehow we were a white Christian nation and we need to get back to that. And is that, I know you've got a new book coming out next year called Fake Christians. Is that going to be what you write about? It's
going to be very heavily about it, yeah. You know, my last book, Separation of Church and Hate, was all about how to use the Bible when dealing with these Christian nationalists. And this book is not about your racist cousin. It's about the people who made him a racist. You know, ever since Rome took over Jesus' startup, 1,700 years ago, they started this new tradition of spirituality called ignoring the stuff Jesus said and doing whatever the hell we wanted to do anyway. And for 1,700 years, there's been two kinds of Christianity. There's the Roman kind, which is imperial. It's about power. It's about rules. It's about dogma. And then there's the Jesus-following kind, which is what the movement was supposed to be. And it's about service and love and humility and going to the margins and getting rid of hierarchies. And how you treat the lowest is how you treat Jesus, and the last shall be first, and all that stuff that empires don't talk about. And this is why authoritarians are always trying to put the 10 Commandments on a courthouse wall or a classroom wall, because it's a criminal justice penal code. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I love the 10 Commandments, don't get me wrong. I memorized them all when I was 6 years old, and because it's important for 6-year-olds to not covet neighbors' wives. But
I used to spend all my extra money donating to the missions.
Sure, well, and that's a good thing.
And that was in second grade.
I get it. Well, but they're teaching you charity. I have no problem with that. But the Ten Commandments can exist under any kind of authoritarian system. The Ten Commandments could exist with dictators, right? The Ten Commandments never challenge power, but Jesus does. Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, the entire thing dismantles any notion of hierarchy or power. Jesus is useless to right-wing politicians, which is why they do what we've seen them do for hundreds of years. They do this formula. It's called you use Jesus to get elected. And then once elected in power, you do the opposite of everything Jesus says. And if anybody ever points that out, you scream that you're being persecuted. And that's the con. And that's what they've been doing for 1,700 years. These right-wing Christians, the Republican Party, they don't fight. Seriously, I ask this on my Sirius XM show every night. MAGA friends, call me up. Give me one thing Jesus talked about that Republicans fight for. Chapter and verse, please, just one. Would you believe I've never had anyone do it? Because they don't know the Bible and they don't fight for Jesus. They use churchy talk, words like sacred or spiritual to get into power, and then they do whatever the hell they want and pretend it's Christian.
Well, I'm really looking forward. I loved your first book, Separation of Church and Hate, and I'm really looking forward to Fake Christians, which
I'm going to get in trouble for this one. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this one.
Well, you kind of got in a little trouble for the last one, but let's not go there. John Fugelsang.
I get a much more pious level of death threat now. Thank you for having me.
Okay, all right. Well, I hope you take care of yourself, and I'd love to have you back anytime, particularly, definitely when the book comes out.
What a pleasure, but I kind of think it's going to be an interesting midterms. Maybe we'll have to catch up before that.
Oh, my God, yes. John Fugelsang, you can hear him on Sirius XM once in a while on Stephanie Miller's show. He is a delight, and you should be reading his book, Separation of Church and Hate. Thank you, John, so much.
Have a great one. Peace.
We got to take a break. We'll be back with more after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/facility assessment to learn more about energy savings.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
You know, we talked earlier in the week with Hadley Duvall, who is a part of a project called Free and Just, where women who have gone through horrible situations with pregnancies in states that don't allow them to get the care they need, and how that has affected them, how it has affected their life, how has it affected their health. And Free and Just is going to be, and is currently on Capitol Hill, so that people can sit down with lawmakers and tell their stories to try to make them understand why these restrictive laws are so harmful to women and families, and how the last thing on earth that we need is some kind of federal abortion ban. One of the people who is a free and just storyteller is Lauren Miller. And she joins us now to share her story and her activism with us now. Lauren, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's turn it over to you, and I want you to tell your story about abortion.
Thank you for this. And my abortion story is, I think, not what many expect, but it is the reality of what happens when politicians meddle in healthcare that they don't understand. I was pregnant in 2022. Actually, 4 years ago this day was the day by which my pregnancy was dated, so not just the fall of Roe. And my husband and I were thrilled to find out that I was pregnant with twins, even if we were a bit surprised. But we had always wanted 3, so this would take our family to that point. Yeah, we looked at it as a BOGO. But unfortunately, I was extremely sick with hyperemesis gravidarum, which is a severe form of morning sickness. I mean, I was in and out of the emergency room. And on top of it, I had a twin pregnancy, and one of those twins was not going to survive. He had a long list of fatal diagnoses from a genetic disorder called trisomy 18. I think I can probably start and end that list with half of where his brain was supposed to be was just fluid. But under Texas law, we couldn't do anything. The government had overreached into our healthcare so much that I couldn't make my own medical decisions. We couldn't make a decision for our family to get a single fetal abortion of our unviable twin in order to protect our healthy twin and myself. And what it ended up as a result is that I was in the ER with two doctors standing there just saying, "I'm so sorry," over and over again, and advising me to go home and pack a bag because the next time that I came back to the ER, they were going to have to keep me there through the duration of the pregnancy, which meant until I lost both twins.
Oh. And the danger of having a twin that isn't viable is one of the big dangers is infection. How could the impaired twin have hurt your viable twin?
Well, before I even got to that point, there was frankly a risk of what would happen to me. When I was in the emergency room the last time, I was headed towards kidney failure. I was shaking. I was incoherent from the severe level of dehydration. I didn't know the last time I had eaten, I had kept anything down. And so I was in rapidly declining condition and they couldn't do anything. All they could do was try and stabilize me. And so even before we got to a point where our unviable twin could impact our healthy one, I wasn't healthy enough. And the irony is that when I sued Texas alongside a group of other women who had fatal diagnoses and or also were in situations like myself where it was very dangerous for us, Ken Paxton, Texas's attorney general, who's currently running for U.S. Senate, simultaneously said that I wasn't dead enough for an abortion and that I was, and I should sue my doctors, even though my doctor was a co-plaintiff. So we really can't win. We're just stuck.
Ken Paxton strikes again. So tell me, where did, you were faced with potential death, your own as well as your viable child. Pick up the story there. What did you and your husband do?
So we were in this very dystopian situation where we knew we were going to have to go out of state, but we were trying to figure out how we could do that without being tracked. Would we drive? Would we leave credit cards at home? Would we leave our cell phone at home? And we ran into two situations. One, we had a toddler. We were going to leave him at home with my mother. She needed to be able to get in touch with us in an emergency. So we were going to have cell phones. And then two, I simply wasn't healthy enough to be able to make the 6-hour drive to the New Mexico border, the 8 hours to the Colorado border. I couldn't do it. That would have only taken me deeper into parts of Texas where there was even more restrictions. It was maternity care deserts. So our whole decision was based on it is exactly 2 hours from Dallas Love Field to Denver International Airport, and I knew how many times I could throw up in 2 hours.
Oh. That condition that you had with that emesis, I've known people with that. And kids, if you don't know what we're talking about, I mean, yes, okay, you're pregnant. Sometimes you have morning sickness. You get queasy. Maybe you throw up. This is not that. This is where I've known women who were hospitalized with this to try to put them in an IV so that they didn't die from dehydration because they couldn't stop vomiting.
And that's exactly where I was. When I went to the hospital the final time, I remember my husband had to help me to the car. He actually worked at that hospital, had to come home, get me, help carry me to the car. I sat there in the car just drooling into this black bucket. I couldn't even hold it at that point because I had no energy left. I couldn't stop myself from the drooling because I was so exhausted between the waves of vomiting. And it was gritty because it was little bits of my esophagus in there at that point. Oh. And that was the situation I was forced to be in. I could have if we had been able to make our own medical decisions without government interference, without politicians meddling in healthcare that they just don't understand, I would never have been in that situation. I would have been able to get the single fetal abortion that I needed days or even a week prior, and I wouldn't be in that situation. I was forced into a dangerous medical emergency because of politicians meddling in healthcare.
I'm talking to Lauren Miller, who is a free and just storyteller, women who tell their abortion stories to try to get people to understand all the ramifications of this. We are going to take a real quick break, and we're going to continue with Lauren's story right after this.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
You know, I'm always telling you guys about Team Hochberg. I'm not the only one who thinks they're great. If you're thinking of buying a new home or refinancing, go on Google. There are nearly 800 five-star Google reviews of Team Hochberg. Here's part of a review from Mary. David is fantastic. He's always ready to help, whether buying, selling, refinancing, or helping with finances. He's patient, even with complicated issues, and goes the extra mile when others wouldn't. I can't recommend him enough. You won't regret calling David for any of your mortgage issues. I'm recommending him to my daughter and anyone in need of a mortgage. Mary called David for help in consolidating her debt and was so thankful for David's guidance that she posted one of the many five-star reviews. If you would like that same outstanding service that Mary got, call Team Hochberg now, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. Team Hochberg has helped me refinance a couple of times. They've helped thousands of our listeners, but they can't help if you don't call 855-563-2843 or go online, 56david.com. ACM Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 643114.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I've been speaking with Lauren Miller, who's part of a group called Free and Just. It is a national group composed of women who tell their abortion stories to legislators and to try to make abortion opponents understand what the reality is and what is at stake. When we were talking to Lauren a minute ago, she had been told that one of the twins she was carrying was not viable. She was practically at death's door, and she was told that she would have to go out of state to get the non-viable twin removed and restore her health and save the life of the other baby. So you're trying to decide, Lauren, do you do an 8-hour drive? Do you fly to New Mexico? Do you fly to Colorado? What did you finally do?
My husband and I eventually decided that logistically the best thing we could do was fly to Colorado. And I really want to reiterate that I was the best case scenario. One of my childhood friends is an obstetrician, and she had trained out of state. So she knew a doctor who could take care of me in Denver. She was able to put me in touch with him. I think he helped me to get a faster appointment, but that still meant, of course, a delay by a week of care. And we went to go to his hospital in Denver because we were able to have that connection. But how many people do have that or have the time, the resources, the money to drop thousands of dollars and fly out of state for several days within the span of a week? It's just not the reality for most Texans or for most Americans.
Well, that's one of the points that's raised, to go out of, because sometimes lawmakers will say, well, it doesn't really matter if our laws are restrictive because they can always go out of state. But not everybody can. You have to take time off work. You have to figure out where you're going to stay when you're there. You have to make those medical connections to get the care you need. And some people have jobs where, you can't just walk in and say, by the way, I need the next week off. Sometimes that means, well, don't bother to come back because you've lost your job. It isn't something that is so easily available to people.
Exactly. There's just one layer after another that is a barrier to accessing healthcare as a result of this, which shouldn't be determined by where you live. And then furthermore, maybe you have the money, maybe you have the time, maybe you have the childcare for existing children, but none of that matters at the end of the day because you can't buy health. If I had been in a worse state, I may not have been able to get on that plane. I have friends as a result of the storyteller work I've been doing where they were told they couldn't be more than 15 minutes from a hospital. I know women who have just left the hospital, gotten on a plane, and gone to Colorado, making that choice, knowing they weren't supposed to be more than 15 minutes from the hospital and hoping they didn't die or hemorrhage on the plane.
I know that your family has been in Texas for generations. Would you consider moving?
It's something I get asked a lot. And to me, Texas is just so ingrained in me. I mean, this is my life. As I'm sitting here with a Zoom background, that is my family's ranch. And it's something I love so much. And to me, I don't want to leave Texas because instead what I see happening with these laws is that they are anti-Texan. They are hurting Texans and they are stripping us from the thing that is so quintessentially Texan, which is the spirit of independence and of freedom. And having politicians make our medical decisions is antithetical to everything I hold dear as a freedom-loving Texan. So I just can't let that happen to my state. So my plan is to stay here and try and make as many changes as I can to reverse the government overreach into our personal lives that we are currently seeing.
You know, you're right, because, hands off Texas, we're independent. Nobody tells us what to do. That's always been, the rap for Texans. And I'm kind of surprised that because of that, there is such an incredibly restrictive law here that would seem to be the opposite of that. Have you talked to anybody in the state legislature?
I have spoken before the state legislature a few times, and I have quite frankly called them out that in my situation, the people who wanted to kill a healthy, planned, wanted pregnancy were the very legislators who call themselves pro-life. Because my husband and I wanted to protect our healthy son, and they took that choice away from us. So that's the real irony, is that we have a lot of legislators who call themselves pro-life, but what about my life? What about the life of what is now my 3-year-old wonderful, sweet Henry? They didn't care about those lives. They cared about the one that was good for their political points.
So I know that you testified before Congress once before. Are you part of the group that's currently going around Capitol Hill trying to meet with legislators there?
So funny enough, the reason I am not in DC today is because I am currently 8 months pregnant and cannot travel at this point in pregnancy. So for all of the criticism about, she didn't want that many kids or anything like that, it's the opposite. We always wanted 3 kids, and we're thrilled that we're welcoming our first girl. We have 2 boys already, so baby girl coming in July. And it's, just so funny how we get criticized for people thinking that we don't want kids, and yet here I am advocating for abortion while very heavily pregnant.
Well, it doesn't seem that odd to me, because people forget that there are people seeking abortions who are doing it because they want to have a family. They want to be healthy enough to get pregnant again. They want to not be sterile because of some infection. And that's what I don't think a lot of people take into consideration. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. And good luck with your new addition.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, we'll be living in a little more chaos, but this has fortunately been a much smoother pregnancy than my twin pregnancy. And this time my husband can enjoy it more than what he was doing last time, which was sitting in the waiting room waiting to hear if I had lost both twins or I was dead enough for an abortion, or if I had gotten too close to death and the process couldn't be reversed for me. So instead, this has been a much better pregnancy, and we're really excited.
Well, congratulations to you both. And
Thank you.
I wish you nothing but the best, Lauren. And I really appreciate you telling your story. I mean, it can't be easy. You know, when you tell this story, you revisit one of the worst things that's ever happened to you. When you tell your story, do you feel like you're living it again? Or have you been able to put some distance there?
It's a little bit of both. Sometimes a question will come up and it's something that I hadn't thought about in years. And that happened to me the other day when somebody was asking about Ken Paxton, and I had revisited the legal response. And I remember thinking that what we were doing was such a modest ask when we sued the state. We were just asking, how dead do we need to be for an abortion? And not only did he completely dismiss us, he dismissed my healthy son, so never really proved he never really was a champion for the unborn. And, you know, he just dismissed us as woke for even asking such a modest question. So through all of that, it really reminded me that we have politicians who view women as disposable.
Yep.
And we are in an election year, so something I think we all need to remember is that if we have politicians who view us that way, they had been voted in and they can be voted out.
Amen to that. Good luck. Thank you for joining me, Lauren. And I wish you and your husband the best.
Thank you so much.
That's going to do it for me today. I will, of course, be here tomorrow at 2 p.m. One of the people we're going to talk to is Christopher Armitage. You know, he does that Substack, The Existentialist Republic. And what I love about his writing is it isn't just I think about this or I think about that. It's here's something that you can do right now. Here is something that state attorneys general can do right now. And here's how they would do it. These are the laws they would use to bring this about. He is very, very bright, very, very knowledgeable. And it is always an incredible conversation with Christopher Armitage. So I'm looking forward to that. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez is next. Ken Mejia Beal is going to be with her. Tom Appel for the car guy. Amanda Zurawski, a reproductive rights advocate. There's a theme here. And Alana Vagianos, who's a national reporter on gender and politics. Tomorrow, Richard Chu starts our day at 6 a.m. He is going to be chatting with somebody from Ohio, an Ohio State rep who's the minority leader of the Ohio House, Dan Summons, managing director of the Chicago chapter of Blessings in a Backpack, and a retired teacher and content creator, Jessica Hawk, known online as My Teacher Face. I will see you tomorrow at 2. Until then, have an absolutely great evening and stay well, take care of yourself, and good night.